I want to start with what has happened between Iran and the United States, the second direct talk between the two sides after the Islamabad and in Switzerland. The two sides came together talking about basically the main problem. One of the main problems was the case of Lebanon. And it seems that the first clause of the agreement, that MOU that was signed by the Iranian president and Donald Trump, is pointing out the sovereignty of Lebanon. And here is what JD Vance said about Lebanon, because it seems that as time goes by, Israelis somehow feeling some sort of pressure coming to Benjamin Netanyahu with the case of Lebanon. And here is what we've learned from JD Vance.
Israel to withdraw forces from southern Lebanon?
Well, we want Israel's security to be protected, and we also want Lebanon's sovereignty to be protected, and this is going to be an ongoing conversation. The Israelis have been very clear they do not have territorial intentions on South Lebanon. The reason they feel they have to be there is because they're worried about Hezbollah fighters in South Lebanon firing into Israel. We do believe, of course it's going to require a lot of hard work, that we can get to a place where Lebanon's territorial integrity and sovereignty is protected, Israel's security is protected, and that's going to require some coordination with the Lebanese armed forces, and also it's going to require the Iranians to rein in Hezbollah. That's all the sort of things that we were talking about yesterday, and again, I think that we got much further compared to where we were just 24 hours ago.
What he said, Scott, in another video that he was mentioning the case of Lebanon, he said two things. One of the important is the new mechanism was defined by the United States and Iran to keep the situation calm between Israel and Lebanon. They call it the deconfliction zone or something like that, a new unit in the way that JD Vance was talking about it. And the second point would be, is that going to be the full withdrawal of Hezbollah or of Israel from Lebanon, or is going to be a partial withdrawal? What is your understanding of the case of Lebanon, which is one of the most complicated situation, I think, with the Strait of Hormuz? They have some sort of understanding with the case of the sanctions, all of that. They're talking to each other, but the case of Lebanon is related to Hezbollah and Israel. How do you see that front?
I see it in very simplistic terms. Israel's security can only be guaranteed based upon Lebanese sovereignty. Hezbollah wouldn't exist today if Israel withdrew from Lebanon. Hezbollah exists only because of Israel's illegal occupation of Lebanon. Of course, that is the initial occupation in the 1980s. People say, where is this going? I remind people that Israel has been kicked out of Lebanon once before by Hezbollah, and Hezbollah will kick Israel out again. That's what's going to happen. Israel has lost this war. Israel has no negotiating position. Iran will not buckle. The United States is agreement incapable. Understand that. The Iranians understand that. You understand that. I understand that. It doesn't matter what JD Vance says, because the United States cannot keep its word. The United States has placed Israeli security ahead of Lebanese sovereignty. That's the whole power equation that's taking place here. Israel gets to bomb Beirut anytime it wants to in the name of Israeli security, but Hezbollah is not allowed to retaliate against Israel in the interest of Lebanese sovereignty. And the only reason, again, why Hezbollah continues to have a militia is because Israel continues to illegally occupy southern Lebanon. The legitimacy of the continuity of the Hezbollah militia disappears immediately the moment Israel leaves all of southern Lebanon, the moment that Lebanon restores sovereignty to every square inch of Lebanese territory. And that's the only solution that's acceptable here. JD Vance and Iran can come up with, a mechanism, a deconfliction mechanism, but it doesn't work if the deconfliction is premised on the notion of Israeli security taking precedence over everything, including Lebanese sovereignty. I just again will remind you, Israel was kicked out of Lebanon once before by Hezbollah. And if Israel wants to continue the fight on its terms, it will be kicked out of Lebanon again by Hezbollah.
we know if they attack again Hezbollah, one of the reasons that Iran didn't respond to the latest Israeli attack in Beirut, in Dahia, was the negotiations between Iran and the United States, because it seems that Donald Trump tried to do his best to put in place some sort of ceasefire, which wasn't the ceasefire until the MOU was signed. Then the later meetings on the that 14 point, the first one is the case of Lebanon. And do you think that as time goes by, if Israel attacks, let's assume you said that Israel will attack and Hezbollah would respond, how do you see the Iranian government responding to Israel and the reaction from the United States?
Okay, it's just crystal clear. The MOU is not in effect unless all aspects of the MOU are in effect. If Israel attacks Lebanon, the MOU is not in effect. And if the MOU is not in effect, then Iran will retaliate. And Iran has shown that the first time. It struck Israel when Israel struck Lebanon. It will do so again. Israel got a pass this time because the United States said it will rein in Israel. The United States is agreement incapable. Israel is agreement incapable. They do not negotiate in good faith. Iran knows this better than anybody. So what will happen? If Israel attacks Lebanon, Iran will retaliate against Israel. What will the United States do? Nothing. The United States is desperate for an agreement. The Strait of Hormuz must remain open. If the United States attacks Iran, Iran will do what it did last time, shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And it's just interesting for people to understand the more uncertainty that exists out there, even if Iran says the Strait of Hormuz is open, understand that, the companies that insure the shipping that needs to go through the Strait of Hormuz, they're not insuring the shipping. Why would they? Why would they insure a ship going through a strait that could be shut down at any time and the ship gets hit and sunk? So, the United States is Donald Trump is in a very, very difficult situation. This isn't about the complexities of any geopolitical it's about Donald Trump's political survival, which hinges on the American economy, which is being choked to death because of the Strait of Hormuz situation. So Donald Trump has to get the strait open in a consistent manner, because if oil doesn't start flowing, then the consequences of the energy security crisis that was precipitated by Trump's stupidity in launching this conflict to begin with